Hello. In this video, I'm just going to quickly talk about a program that I wrote with a student today. It addresses taking inputs, and specifically we're interested in how to take inputs using the JOptionPane class and some built-in methods. What these do is they provide an opportunity to do GUI inputs, that is graphical user interface inputs. So let's talk through this, shall we? This is what we already know how to do, or what you use to take inputs from the console. So to take inputs from the console, and the console is the screen down below here. You can see I've already run the program. You can use the scanner class. So here you can see I've declared what's called a scanner object. For those of you that don't know what objects are, you can think of this as a scanner variable. There's definitely more to it, and you will eventually want to explore that. And I've declared some other variables down below. So we print to screen what is your name, and then we take an input. What we want to recognize here is that this is an assignment statement. So with an assignment statement, we always evaluate right side first, then put the result into the left side. So I don't actually have, you can't actually put my finger on the screen here, but essentially when I look at this assignment statement here, I'm going to ignore what's on the left side. I'm only going to look at what's on the right side initially. And what I know is that because I'm using the scanner object s dot next, I'm using a built-in method called next, which is contained within the scanner class. And what that method does is it takes input from the keyboard in the console down here. So if I want to find the information about that, what I can do is I can go to the internet. We'll just pop up another screen here. We'll go to Google and we'll type in scanner class Java 7. This process of looking up information online in the API is really important, and it's going to make you a much more versatile programmer, because every language has an API you can access. So here's my scanner class, and what I'm interested in is the method. So I'm going to scroll down, and there's lots of information here. And you'll always notice these things called constructors. Sometimes you'll see things called fields. We're interested right now in methods. And if I scroll down, I'm looking for next. And if we scroll down, there it is. So again, we want to be able to read this method information. It doesn't have the word static here, so that means I need to access this method using an actual instance of the class. That is, our instance is s. It returns what's called a string, and it takes no parameters. So this generates a string, and it puts that string into name1. Then I ask, what is your favorite integer? And it's the same idea. An assignment statement, we evaluate the right-hand side first, s.nextInt. So s is a scanner object, nextInt is a method contained within the scanner class. And this, again, we can go online and look at the documentation. NextInt, if we scroll down here, there's a whole bunch of them you'll see. There it is. NextInt returns an integer. So it takes that integer and puts it into num1. Just do a little fixing up here. And we do the same thing, of course, with a double and a character. Now, a character is a little bit different, but if we evaluate this from left to right, it makes sense. We first go s.next, which is going to generate a string, and then this becomes a string here, and then we use charadd. Charadd is a method contained in a string class which takes a specific character from a word. So if we run the first part of this program, we see down here, what is your name? My name is Paul. What is my favorite integer? 77. What is my favorite double? 4.5. What is your favorite character? T. So these are the types of inputs we know how to do, and they're very useful if you want to take inputs from the console. But we want to use GUI inputs. And GUI stands for Graphical User Interface. So these are the pop-up screens that you see that make programs look fancier and a little more engaging from the user perspective. So we're just going to continue on this program. So the first thing you do is I hit enter. Here's the first pop-up. The first type of pop-up we have is a basic display. Notice we have a frame here, and it has a button that we click OK to move on. So if we come back in here, the first example is right here. So JOptionPane is the class, and we use a built-in method called showMessageDialog. So again, I'm going to go online and find the information about this method. So I jump out to my internet. Here's JOptionPane. And there is lots of information here, far more than what I understand or anyone is going to fully have memorized. The key thing to remember is we're not trying to memorize these methods. We really want to focus on how do we find them. So one way to find it is hit Control F on your screen, and we're going to look for show message dialog. I should get a whole bunch of matches. Let's expand this. We're going to go next, next, and here it is down below. Now what you'll notice is that, let me find that again. There it is. What you'll notice is that there's 3 of them. Java is smart enough to know which one to use based on what you give it, what parameters you pass it. So if I take a look at my example, I see I've passed it 2 parameters. I've passed this parameter null. And for now, in our class, we just said you need this here. Some students have explored why. But again, that gets into a little bit more complicated ideas. And I've passed it a string. So if I go back to my documentation here and take a look, we see this one that takes 2 parameters, component and object. Now for those of you that haven't studied object-oriented programming yet, I will tell you, you can interpret an object as a string at this point. So one thing we notice is that this method has no return type because it's void, and also it has this modifier there called static. Again, where we first came across this modifier static was in the math class. When a method has a static modifier associated with it, we invoke or call the method with the name of the class. So the name of the class here is JOptionPane. So we invoke this method with the name of the class. Again, let's go back for a second, look at the scanner class. Notice next, where is next here? It does not have that modifier static, so I need an object or an instance of the class to call it. So watch for that modifier. So this is how we show a basic message to the screen. Well, maybe we want to take a string input. So to take string inputs, we use a method called showInputDialog. So again, let's jump out to our documentation, and we're going to find showInputDialog, and we scroll up here. So you'll see there's a whole bunch of different show methods. You can do all sorts of pre-built GUI interfaces. And here's showInputDialog, and you'll notice that I'm passing it a single parameter of type string. So again, I jump back in here, and so I'm going to look for, there it is, showInputDialog, and again, this says the parameter is an object, but for our purposes, we can assume that an object is a string at this point. So what I notice here, the difference now with showInputDialog is that the return type is a string. So again, we set this up as an assignment statement. And when we look at an assignment statement, we ignore the left-hand side initially, and we look at the right-hand side. So we just evaluate this part here. I'm going to access the JOptionPane class. I'm going to use the showInputDialog method, which I know is static because I am invoking it with the name of the class. And what that method does is pops up a screen where you can type in an input. So let's run and I'll show you. So what is your name? We'll just click through this really quickly. So this is a basic display that is represented by this line right here. So I click OK. Please input your name. So showInputDialog generates a box like this where I can type my name in. So if I type my name Paul, what happens is when I click OK, this line here is going to become the word Paul, and then we're going to put that into the variable name1. So if we let's just kill our programs here and let's try that once more. My name is Paul. I'm going to click OK, and then we're going to call the next line, which is another example of show message dialog, and it says your name is Paul. Spectacular. Okay, let's look at the next example. Well, sometimes we want to take inputs that we need to apply mathematics to, and we have a little problem here. We only know how to take inputs for strings using the JOptionPane methods, and if it's a string, even if it is a number, we can't apply mathematical operators to it. So what we need to do is we need to do a two-step process here. We need to first take the input as a string and then convert it to a different type. So here you'll notice again an input that says please input your favorite number, and we store it in snum1. Now if I just do this, and this line here displays that number to the screen, it doesn't matter if that number is stored as a string or an integer, it's just simply being displayed. The problem comes is that if I want to take my number and multiply it by 10, I can't multiply snum1 by 10 because it's a string. It's an interesting consideration we need to make when we're programming, and that is we need to consider what the type of data is before we do anything with it. So it turns out there's this great class called the integer class, and there's a method called parseInt. And what that will do is it will take a string and convert it to an integer. So again, we can find all the information we need about this online in our documentation. I see them using the integer class. I know that's a class because it's capitalized. I see I'm using the parseInt method. So if I want to find this documentation online, I already have it here, but let's just make sure we understand how to find it. I type in integer class, Java 7, and I scroll down here and I look for parseInt, and there it is. We see the method parseInt, we see that it takes as a parameter a string, and we see that it returns an integer. So what this method does is it takes a string and converts it to a numerical representation. So if I put the string in that has the value, say 8, so let's just make a modification here. If I pass it the string 8, num1 will get the integer value 8. So since snum1 we know is going to be a number, this will convert it into an integer, and therefore we can then multiply it by 10 and sort that out. So if we run this, again, we'll just quickly click through the program. This is a basic display. Input your name. My name is Paul. What is your favorite number? My favorite number is 6. So again, to display your favorite number is 6, it can stay a string. It doesn't matter. But if I want to say your favorite number times 10 is 60, and you notice we have some funny display problems here, which we'll fix in a moment. In order to do this calculation, I need to convert that string number into an integer. So let's kill this for a second. Let's fix this. I don't need to take an input here, so I'm not going to use show input dialog. I'm going to use show message dialog. We're going to go bracket. Null, your favorite number times 10 is, and let's make sure that looks nice without a space there. Now I've been talking a lot in this video and rather quickly, but we're going to look at one last thing. We want to be a little more efficient with our integer input. So in the previous case, notice in order to take an input, I need two variables. I need a string variable to take that input, and then I need an integer variable to hold the converted value. We can do this in one step. And for those of you that have studied the idea of composite functions in mathematics, this can be thought of like a composite function. Remember, the term method and function in computer science is used interchangeably. In Java we call them methods, in C++ we call them functions, in Lua we call them functions. They mean the same thing. So if for those of you that have studied functions, let's take a look at an example here and we'll see how this can be applied. If we imagine a function f of x is x plus 1, and then we have another function g of x is 3x. If I apply f at g at 2, the way I evaluate this is I start on the inside. So I'm first going to evaluate g at 2. So I'm going to take my function g and put 2 in. 2 times 3 is 6. And that's going to result in f at 6. And then I put 6 into f at x and I get 7. We can do combinations of calls in the same line by thinking about what each method returns and takes. By ensuring that the return type is the same type as the parameter value, we can set up more compact code. And this is what programmers tend to do. So this line here is the same as the combination of this line and this line. And let me show you how. We always start from the inside and work our way out. So again, this is an assignment statement, and with an assignment statement I'm going to look at the right hand side, and I'm going to start from the inside. So the first thing this will do is it will generate a show input dialog screen and take an input. And that input is going to be put directly in as the parameter, or directly in, as the argument to parseInt. So this will pop up a screen, I type in a number, and that number will then appear here. So if I put in 6, let's say, what will happen is 6 will get put in like that, and then the computer will process 6 into an integer. So I hope this video helped. There's a whole bunch here. JOptionPane Class is a great class for doing basic GUI inputs. The next step would be looking at how to make your own GUI inputs, which is a fun endeavor unto itself. Anyways, have a great day, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask.